When Street Fighter 6 was announced, there was a lot of excitement and hype around it. Street Fighter has been with us for decades now, and it shaped the gaming landscape with each generation. Now that a new game is finally here, I wanted to take my time with it and really dig into the meaty, throbbing, sweaty biceps of this newest entry. Let's review it and see if Street Fighter 6 can reclaim its place in the genre. Let's get some backstory out of the way first. SF5 is a massive fumble out of the gate, and we all know it. Despite all the betas and console exclusivity, it took several years and seasons worth of content before it finally became a game that we could call Street Fighter. However, late in the game's life, after a change of captains helming the ship and fresh outlooks on things, it became a great fighter. Thankfully, Capcom and its new blood behind the scenes have really come through to make Street Fighter 6 something truly amazing. To call this one of the most jam-packed fighting game releases in recent years is probably not an understatement. The core of any fighter is the actual gameplay, of course, but it's always been a negative mark against the genre for not offering more to do other than mashing buttons against others or the CPU. Street Fighter 6 does a lot to make this more than just another release. Of course, the meat of any Street Fighter is the versus brawling action. While the game itself is plenty familiar for anyone who's been popping coins into arcade cabinets since they were a kid, 6 has some pretty big changes to go along with that familiarity. For starters, many of our favorite World Warriors return not just with new looks, but new moves, mechanics, and ways to fight. They still look and feel like the characters we all know and love, but everything about them's just been moved forward. Ryu is definitely Ryu, but he sports a new mature look and even retains its popular hot Ryu beard. His move list is essentially the same also, but it grabs things from a variety of places in the character's decades-long existence. And that's not to mention characters like Chun-Li who feel completely new, and I can't even wrap my head around her new mechanics and move list. It's great to see such a concentrated effort to make the classic characters feel fresh among the new characters that just joined the roster. None of them are here to replace anyone, but there's some interesting ties and connections that ground them well into the universe. Kimberly being a ninja like Guy, or JP having psycho powers like Bison, are cool links to past characters who have yet to return, but it also doesn't step on any toes either. The best part of the roster is how unique everyone is from each other. They all have fun and interesting sauce to them that becomes apparent as soon as you start mashing buttons. Ryu is nothing like Ken, Ken is nothing like Marisa, Marisa is nothing like Dalsum, and so on. Not just their special moves are different, but their general game plans all differ, and the mechanics are loose enough to not pigeonhole playstyles. This is something I super appreciate in fighting games, and I'm really happy that Street Fighter 6 has a ton of player expression. Speaking of new mechanics, the drive system is something that might throw people for a loop until you start taking advantage of it for yourself. There's drive impact, drive rush, and drive reversal. This universal mechanic brings a lot of excitement to matches due to its variety. Impact is a big armored hit, rush is a dash that can be used to start or extend combos, and reversal is something used to get opponents off of you. Everyone can do it with some variation to its effectiveness and usage, but it adds quite a lot to the experience. None of this matters though if the game itself didn't feel good to play. I was really wondering if those rose-colored glasses would come off at some point in this regard, but it never did. Every time I sat down to get in a few matches, win or lose, I always thought about how good this game feels to play. The movement is smooth, it looks beautifully animated, and hits and look and sound amazing. And the game itself just feels super responsive and enjoyable. Even at my low to intermediate level, I'm constantly having a blast mashing buttons with each character. Next we should talk about controls. 6 has 3 different styles all meant to be welcoming to a variety of levels. Classic controls are the traditional 6-button layout, modern is the newer hotness that removes some buttons for the sake of simplicity. Special moves can be done with a single button and direction, and normals are restricted to a few core choices. Also, by holding down the combo button, any mashed buttons will link into auto combos. It's pretty interesting and a great way to get up to speed in Street Fighter as a middle ground or jumping off point. Then there's the dynamic mode for absolute beginners. This is where the game almost auto-plays it for them. It's all in the interest of weaning new players into the world of button-bashing fighters, and it's an awesome series option to have. Street Fighter 6 isn't bereft of modes either. The usual suspects all return. Arcade, training, versus, and even a new extreme battle are all here to play with. Arcade is the standard ladder of a few CPU matches that leads to a simple character ending. Training lets you practice all the combos that you're going to miss mid-match, as well as a variety of tutorials for characters and challenge modes to get a feel for the game. Versus is, well, versus. And Extreme is a fight with silly hazards to keep your eye on. It's what you'd expect, but I was really happy to see the character tutorials return with a lot more focus in their content. Online modes are great here too, and Street Fighter 6 touts some of the best netcode or online quality in a fighting game. Almost every match I played had been a really smooth experience and it felt almost like I was offline. There's some serious magic going on here. Of course, it is the internet, so not every match was perfect, and I do get the occasional lobby hiccup, but these are so infrequent that it's kind of barely worth mentioning. Jumping into an online battle is easy enough to do. It can be done from the single player modes or from the game's online battle hub. Ranking is done at the character level this time, so after a few placement matches you'll be ranked and proceed from there. It's pretty great to finally have this as a thing in Street Fighter. It really helps complement character experimentation in my opinion. Instead of taking the Zangief I just want to mess around with into a ranked match with a high level player, it ranks me as bronze accordingly, and it lets me play against other beginner players. It's really nice to finally have. The Battle Hub lobby is a neat addition where you can run around with your custom avatars and do quite a surprising amount of things between matches. Showing off your character is a part of the fun since it can be customized so heavily. You can jump into classic Capcom arcade games, do extreme battles, and even battle your avatars with all the chaotic nonsense that brings. The online experience is robust and well-functioning, thankfully. There have been a variety of fighting game lobbies over the years, with varying quality I'll say, and Capcom took a lot of chances with it, and I'm glad it really worked out. Rounding things out is the huge single-player experience, World Tour. This mode acts as a big map beat-em-up adventure with your own customized character. It's also a pseudo-story mode, but not really. When I say that, I mean that the story here is about your character's personal quest to find power and how innocuous of a concept that is. You don't learn what Ryu's doing, you don't stop some evil organization, you're not doing anything like that. While the World Warriors do appear, they act more as goalposts for the adventure and not the reason. I was pretty fine with this concept. Considering what the previous stories have been like in Street Fighter titles, this was fine while also being a little disappointing. The minor points involving the World Warriors are lackluster, but I get the idea of what they were going for. We basically get an introduction and a few character bullet points to play with, but that's about it. It's interesting, but since nothing is connected in a way that really makes anything compelling, it feels like a missed opportunity. And then the story kind of seems like it's going for a big villainous plot reveal, and it doesn't. It just kind of ends. Your created character can have quite a variety of looks, from being a failed shade of your favorite anime character or even attempting to make Mystique from the X-Men. The choices are quite large. You unlock a ton of clothing and a handful of extra options like skin colors and a few other things as you progress as well. You really get a lot of freedom here, and it's pretty cool. As you discover them, you can choose a master, one of the game's main roster of fighting game characters to choose from to mimic their style. As you level up, you gain access to their entire move list, but even cooler is that you can mix and match these moves to make a completely unbalanced nightmare character. Once again, the freedom is super neat. Having a mode where you can fight almost anyone walking around, do fun mini games, and explore with abilities is pretty cool. As you run around and fight everyone you come across, you earn experience for your character and get items. As an RPG fan, I was on the hook pretty quickly with this. Leveling up gains you stats as well as unlocking more moves for whatever character style you're using. Exploring for hidden items and locations is weirdly fun too, thanks to the World Warrior abilities like sumo headbutts and hadokens used to get around. World Tour mode in general is a big tutorial though. It becomes a bit more apparent with the minigames and missions it has you doing. Minigames can be things like parry training or breaking bottles. Each of these has different commands and timing aspects that secretly wean you into the mechanics needed to win a real match. The various missions ask the players to do specific things in a fight too, like drive impact a certain number of times and so on. Since the fights aren't too hard in general, these extra missions really do add a lot of spice. The single player mode is pretty beefy, and it took me a few good dozen hours to get through it in between getting my face pushed in online. I did think it was a bit too long in the tooth nearing the end, but I admit the avatar rewards and other silliness kept me interested all the way to the end. For first time or new Street Fighter players, it can be a fun game mode to mess around in and get the basic gist of fighting games. That said, the pacing and ease of it to just mash through kind of makes me question how useful it is compared to just going into the normal tutorial mode. And of course, none of this matters if the game itself wasn't sporting an awesome presentation. It's sharp, colorful, and filled with personality. The paint theme on big attacks and hip-hop influence really did a lot to give this game a certain charm that's honestly just been missing since the Dreamcast era. World Tour does look a bit gaudy though compared to the main game, but I think we can let that slide. Still, Street Fighter 6 is an amazing game overall. After 5's disappointment at launch, I was worried 6 would stumble in some way it just really couldn't afford to. It's not only one of the best fighting games around now, it's one of the best fighting game packages we've gotten in a really long time. It's stacked with content, and it goes well and above to accommodate both old and new players. This feels like a mega concentrated effort to not just make a new Street Fighter, but bring the series back to its status as the peak of fighting games without question. Given how much the competition has stepped up their game with awesome releases like Guilty Gear Strive before and Tekken 8 among others on the horizon, I'm super glad Street Fighter 6's efforts have paid off, and I can't wait to see how it continues to grow as new characters and content get added. Street Fighter 6 is a full recommendation for me, and I'm giving it an amazing 9 out of 10. If you're still on the fence about this game or just new and curious about fighting games, Street Fighter 6 is the game to jump in with. If you like this review, please leave a comment down below, like, sub, tell a friend about my reviews, and more. You can hit the links as well to see more content from me. Gaming here on YouTube, live on Twitch, and a variety of fun, stupid videos about Japan on my TikTok. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.